Okay, friends, America's New Close here, Mike Arishtian. It is my great pleasure to have on my friend and fellow candidate for Congress, Jim DeBello. Jim, thanks for popping on with me. Jim and I met, of course, on the campaign trail. I was running for the 53rd Congressional District, and I was very excited to see Jim announce that he was running for the 52nd Congressional District against Scott Peters. And we have lots of great stuff to talk about, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Getting to Know Jim. Jim, thanks for coming on.
Well, Michael, it's great to be here. Boy, I remember meeting you over a year ago. I think we were cruising the Bay.
We were cruising the Bay.
Yeah, and boy, a fellow tech entrepreneur like myself, and we hit it off, and you're running for the 53rd. I'm jumping into the 52nd because really we didn't like seeing what was happening to our country, to our state, to our community. So here we are in the fight. We're just days away from November 3rd.
I mean, I think I've said this before. You got to be one of the most qualified guys to ever run for Congress, right? You've got incredible academic credentials, business school, international business experience, created one of the great companies here in San Diego, MyTech, which has been the leader in digital imaging and mobile check deposit. I mean, when you came on the scene, I said, you're exactly the kind of guy that should be representing this part of Southern California in our federal government. And I was just so blown away that you were going to do this. And so I'm so excited to talk about you. And, we're not lawyers. Here we are, two guys that are making a claim for it, not lawyers, just problem solvers. And so that's why I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Well, Michael, you forgot one of my top qualifications is that I appeared in the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes as the blind traffic cop back in 1978. So don't forget the acting.
Is that a Roger Corman film?
That's a John DeBello film, and Steve Peace, former state senator.
Oh, awesome.
It's a lot of fun. Boy, that thing was is still playing, and George Clooney was in the second Attack of the Killer Tomato film. So you see there was potential there. And I know you're a singing artist, so we have that in our backgrounds too, but we don't talk a lot about it.
Well, we have diverse backgrounds, and I think that kind of diverse background is the type of person that should be representing these folks. And I think one of the things that really struck me about you that I really liked on the outset is, like myself, I studied environmental engineering at Stanford, and I wanted to be ahead of this conversation on the environment. I mean, the environment is not a priority of just the left. The environment is on all of us to protect for future generations, right? And so whether we're talking about global warming or energy production, the stuff that tell me about kind of what you've been looking at with some of the Tijuana runoff. You as a voter and myself as a water sports community guy, I thought, okay, we are the ones that need to be holding the mantle on these conversations. Tell us more about kind of what you were doing there.
Well, here we are, two Republican conservative fiscally talking about climate, and that's the right thing to do. And I think characteristically, Republicans are mischaracterized by the Democrats, by the left, as being uncaring about the environment, and just exactly the opposite of what's true. A couple of things that I see are really, really important. In my district, the 52nd district, which, by the way, starts in Coronado in San Diego County, moves up through La Jolla, all coastal communities, and then goes east to Poway. So we cover a lot of terrain, and we represent over half of San Diego's economy. But the climate has been a big issue in my book because we have an issue in San Diego with the Tijuana River sewage outflows driving north and flowing into our valleys and flowing into our ocean, where our Navy SEALs are training, where our economy is driven by tourism, but more importantly for our own community, for their own pleasure. And often these beaches are soiled, they're closed, In fact, over the last 3 years, closed 500 days out of the last 3 years. It's ridiculous. And this problem has been kicked down the road for 70 years. So my opponent is an EPA lawyer when he began his government career 30 years ago. You would think when he got into Congress, the first thing he would have done was to jump on the soapbox and make this his issue, to own it. But he hasn't owned it. Fortunately, with the Trump administration and the new USMCA, $300 million were allocated. The EPA is allocating that money. But even recently on 60 Minutes, they said, and everyone agrees, that's a drop in the bucket of what it's going to take. It's the worst ecological disaster in the country. And it's a shame that it's right here in San Diego. And that's one of the things that I'm running on, is to clean that up. So number one, sewage, Michael. But I would also go into power and energy. And I know you feel strongly about this, but I'll just say a few things about that. I mean, here we are in the 5th largest economy in the world here in California, but we're acting more like a third world country. We have rolling brownouts. We have the threats of blackouts. We have bad land management, not poor, but bad land management, and these unsustainable, unpreventable fires that happen every season because we've diverted resources to wind and solar. Now, I think wind and solar are terrific. Why wouldn't we want wind and solar? Renewable, zero emissions, of course. But we know the sun goes down, and we know that the wind stops. And so we end up buying on the spot market fuel or energy made from natural gas or even coal plants in different states that are imported. So we pay more. We have less reliability in our grid, and our citizens suffer. That's not right. We should look at other types of fuel and ways to create electricity to power our growing needs here in California and throughout the country. I'll stop there. I know you have a lot to think about there, but I'll tell you, it's a big part of what my campaign's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember you are leading the charge to some extent. I know you had a meeting with Representative Dan Crenshaw of Texas, and he has some plans that he and some other Republicans, and in a very bipartisan way, is putting forward in a way that says, look, we're not reacting to this Green New Deal and saying that that's not a priority. We agree on the what we're trying to achieve. We disagree on the how we're trying to get there. And so I think that kind of Republican leadership on the environment and on energy is exactly what we need. And it sounds like he thought you would be a great ally in Congress, and his ability to come on here and decide that was in fact something that you could be really helpful with. I thought that was a testament to your character and background.
Well, Crenshaw is a terrific representative out of Texas. He was mocked, if you remember, on Saturday Night Live because of his eye patch. He was a veteran. He lost his eye in battle, and they mocked him. And fortunately, they invited him on to the show. He did a magnificent job, and it really helped him in terms of his national visibility. And what he's been saying is that we shouldn't be on the defensive as Republicans or as conservatives. We should be on the offensive. And I agree with that. We should have creative ideas that take the ball further with regard to addressing climate, with regard to alternative sources of energy that are consistent, reliable, and abundant, and cheap. And so I agree with that one. What you're hearing more and more, which is interesting, Michael, to me, is more discussion about the nuclear options that are ahead of us with fusion, the power of the sun, which is still arguably 40 or 50 years away, but in the continuum of history, that's not a long time. And there's investment going on now. It's a binational effort between the United States, France, and other countries with ITER. And it's also led by one of the companies in our district, General Atomics.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's a very important point because that is abundant and clean and renewable energy without the side effects of waste. But there's a second
back to the future, right? This is the flux capacitor.
That's right. Now, when you try to go to electric cars in California and you don't have enough electricity to fuel those cars, what are we thinking?
That's the great irony.
4,000 megawatts of power have been taken off the grid here in California when we shut down 2 nuclear plants recently. We haven't replaced that. That's why we have the brownouts and the blackouts. And yet we're going to go to electric cars. I mean, this will send this economy into a tailspin. So it's nonsensical. You got to look at alternatives. And we hear Cory Booker talk about this, nuclear. Yep. And I've been influenced a lot by a guy named Michael Schellenberger. And Michael is a liberal activist, an environmentalist, a conservationist who's been doing this for 3 decades. So he's not a lightweight. He's actually on the UN IPCC review panel for the climate report. And Michael wrote a book called Apocalypse Never. I really encourage your listeners, all of us, to study that backwards and forwards because he debunks a lot of the myths. And if you think about even wind and solar, for wind farms, it takes 400 times more acreage to have an efficient wind farm than it does with even a natural gas plant or a small nuclear plant that doesn't require cooling from the ocean, and the new technology doesn't. So he's a proponent of nuclear. Very interesting discussion now. Yeah. And I have to add that some of the older fellows that I know that have been in this industry, in fact, I just recently met with the former president of SDG&E, who was behind the initiation of the San Onofre plant. Okay. And he said, listen, that was so hard. And there was so much public opinion against that because of the media, the celebrity activists. And he says, unfortunately, I don't think nuclear will ever get resonance again. And I heard that also from another senior executive at a different company who feels the same. However, I do and am more optimistic as more and more people are thinking about alternative fuel sources that are renewable. And as Michael Schellenberger says, and I'm listening, is that, hey, it's a natural step to go from coal to natural gas, and now from natural gas to nuclear, if indeed we're serious about clean, renewable, zero-emission fuel and electricity. So that's where I stand right now, and I like to investigate that more. I think we at Congress need to investigate that more.
Yeah, I think, I remember when the libertarian rag Colette invited Schellenberger and others to bring some of their thoughts on nuclear to the table, both fission and fusion. And I think, this has been a topic that was not to be discussed. And the fact that it's now entering the public discourse again, I think is really effective. And I think it's a problem solving tack that we need to be excited about. Also, the fact that you're able to lead that charge, I think that's really important.
Let's go on the offensive.
We know would be a job killer. And as we saw from the debate last night, energy is a major factor. And to say that we're going to just outright end the entire oil industry and end the coal industry, I mean, there are huge states for which that is a number of their jobs. So that would probably not be the type of drastic economic change we'd be looking for.
I agree with you on that one. And it's interesting. I did watch the presidential debate, and I thought Joe Biden's response says, hey, I'm going to support fracking in Pennsylvania. And of course, we know earlier on the trail, he was against fracking. And then he says, well, it's really to capture the methane. But he's going to get pulled further and further to the left. There's no question about that, particularly with his vice president, with what they've done with the progressive left, with Bernie Sanders in terms of their combined platform. He can't resist that. And unfortunately, that will kill jobs. But more importantly, it's going to kill our economy. And this is the time where we need to economically recover from COVID, put people back to work. Let's not take them out of the game. And we all know that energy is the core to economic productivity and growth. There's a direct correlation with access to electricity and productivity and economic growth. And we've seen that historically, not only in this country, but throughout the world. In fact, that's why Africa needs more electricity to help them grow, but they don't have access to it. They're still going into the rainforest to cut down wood to build charcoal so they can heat their fires. It's very inefficient, and it hurts the habitat, and it's poor for conservation. Now, we need to build electrical plants. We need to do it efficiently, and we can't stop the fossil fuel industry in its tracks. That's what fuels this nation's success. We can evolve off of it through better forms of energy that are less expensive and more plentiful, but you can't go back and kill an old energy source. That's just inefficient.
Well, on that topic of lockdown, I mean, you touched on it a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about jobs, and then we can get into economic liberty and, educational liberty too. what are some of the things you're thinking about? I mean, I know we're both big opponents of AB5, and your opponent Scott Peters is interested in making that a federal proposition called the PRO Act, right? Where independent creators, independent workers would be really harmed by this. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of the ways in which, from a legislative standpoint, we could go up against those thoughts?
Yeah, Michael, I'd love to talk about that because I think they're connected. COVID, economic recovery, poor legislation, over-regulation, they're all linked together here. I lived in China during SARS in 2003. I ran a company there, and we had to experience this for the first time. Fortunately, it was before global travel from the Chinese, and it was generally confined to the country of China, but it was devastating also and deadly. But we did keep our jobs and kept our businesses open by providing for our employees and observing public health guidelines, social distancing, wearing a mask, all part of the regimen that was important. But we kept the companies open. We kept the economy open. And that's what we need to do here. You know, you don't have to sacrifice your economy. You can satisfy public health and your economy by following public guidelines. And that was my lesson from 2003. And we see now that we have businesses open. Costco and Walmart, big box stores, have been opened. But as a sidebar, Congress hasn't been. They've refused to meet often. In fact, they've offered for the first time now in 240 years since our Constitution was approved, the ability to vote by proxy. Can you believe that? So our House of Representatives, led by the Democrats, allow for representatives not to show up. And so 70 Democrats have voted by proxy. In fact, my opponent has given his vote away to a representative in New York. I just think that's wrong for our local constituents, for our community. This person in New York knows nothing about the 52nd district. And so I just believe that if you got the job, do the job. Like they do at Walmart and Costco. Those people show up. They earn their wages. Well, we're paying $175,000 a year for a congressman plus benefits, golden benefits, $250,000, and they need to show up. So anyhow, I get off on that one, but let me tell you about the job thing. And this is important because I think AB5, Michael, is what you brought up, and I'm totally against AB5.
Right.
It's a job killing legislation that doesn't allow you to be your own boss. And so I'm a working mom. I'm a musician. I'm a stagehand. I need to work part-time because I might be getting my graduate degree or finishing my college degree, or I have another ambition in terms of my personal growth. I don't want a full-time job. I want to work, earn some bucks. I can make ends meet. That's what part-time independent contractors do. And that's wonderful. That's American freedom. That's American individual liberty to be able to go out and work the way you want to work. But AB5 takes that away. Bad enough here in California, which again, we need help in opening up this economy. But there's people like my opponent, Scott Peters, who says, hey, we're going to take this to Washington. So he is taking this disaster to Washington in the form of a PRO Act. That's the name of the bill, PRO Act. Don't ask me why. And Joe Biden supports it also. And really, if you look at who sponsors it and supports it, it's all big labor. So this is nothing more than a cynical big labor approach, job-killing regulation that's going to hurt us. And that's why I like what President Trump is doing to deregulate this economy, get people back to work. People get self-worth from working, not just paychecks. And it gives them value and purpose in life. And you're sitting at home without a job, that's not value and purpose. And that has other implications. I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I know when I'm listening to you, I'm hearing such a sense of leadership. I mean, obviously you led this company. You're a creator. You're thinking about these things as a problem solver. I can't imagine that the people of Coronado, that the people of La Jolla, that the people of Poway are not interested in having a congressperson who is a leader and who is pushing forward new ideas and getting involved in these conversations, because I don't think anybody can argue against the fact that Scott Peters has been really a follower. He has not really shown any sort of initiative. He's been somebody that the Democrats, as they move further and further left, have just relied on as this kind of rubber stamp vote. And I think that, you know, America's finest city here, I think we really espouse people who are thinking for themselves and who are, you know, pushing forward these new ideas. And so I hear that from you, and I really hope that resonates with the voters.
Well, I thank you, Michael, for that. And I think it is resonating, and I've gotten great support from the communities in which I intend to represent in Congress. Listen, Scott Peters has not had any major legislative achievements, zero major legislative achievements. He hasn't passed a single bill, zero bills that he's authored in 8 years. To me, that's underperformance. So he's never, not even demonstrated passion or performance, in my opinion. And I think in the 21st century, we need to change things up. This is a new world, and you know that. Not only a new economy, new issues that we have to address, but it's a technology world. And that's where I think you and I come into play, because we understand the bits and the bytes. We understand AI and machine learning. We understand what it means about cybersecurity and theft of intellectual property, things that the Chinese are perpetrating. So I think we need to be stronger, more aware, and also think about the 21st century as opposed to being 20th century Congress people. And that's what I think Scott Peters represents. That's why I'm running.
What do you think from a standpoint of education? So when we talk about economic initiative and leadership, you know, it all starts right with education. Obviously, we have such an incredibly educated community here, both in biotech and in, you know, IT tech here in San Diego. And when we're looking at these kinds of industries, in order to continue to fill those positions with personnel who have the capabilities to be great scientists, to be great thinkers, we need to make sure that our educational system is on par with that. Are we seeing, with this economic shutdown and school shutdown, are we seeing in some ways unified school district, you know, playing partisan politics here? I can't imagine the number of folks that have kids that are doing this virtual learning, you know, through the dark head, as Joe Biden says. I don't think people are excited as this becoming the new normal. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what your sentiment is on this reopening of the economy, and then we can get into some of the other things that you can touch on this in your response, but you know, Prop 16 is really taking away this notion of meritocracy when it comes into getting into our UC schools. I would love to hear you talk about education along the gamut from early stage to how we're admitting people into our universities and grading them.
Well, yeah, that's a great lead in and a great question. And I'll talk about education, but I'll kick it off by talking about being a champion for technology and the new industries that we have here right in the 52nd district and throughout San Diego County. It's a very vibrant life science, biotech industry, telecommunications, software, AI, machine learning, a lot of it emanating out of UCSD, one of the largest engineering schools in the country.
One of the best.
So we need to fill these jobs with well-trained and educated individuals. Diversity of education is important as well, but one through meritocracy is what I emphasize. And yet we had in the state of California an initiative for ethnic studies. And let me tell you about that. That really is to have a retrospective reimagination of what our history is, in my opinion. And it doesn't teach the kids what they need to do or what they need, skills they need for the 21st century. I came out against a 331, which was the AB bill that was talking about initiatives on ethnic studies, because that's valuable school time. I am all in favor of ethnic diversity, equality, and justice. Absolutely, I am. But we're in the 21st century, and these kids don't even know how to go out their own personal finances. They don't understand the math, the reading, how to write well.
Yeah, what happened to the 3 R's? Reading, writing, arithmetic.
Oh my God, Michael. Yeah, I guess it's old-fashioned, but it shouldn't be. And we're not even teaching civics anymore, Michael. I was astounded. I was at a conference 2 years ago, a roundtable, very smart people involved in China policy. And the discussion around the table was, hey, we have things to learn from the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese way of doing things. I go, what? I lived in China. There's no social liberty in China. If anything, it's less so today than it has been before. Their Belt and Road initiatives are a shameless effort to command the world's presence. So I really believe that finally we're waking up in America to address the issues of civics, education, to understand what makes America exceptional. So we can counteract some of these feelings that, hey, you know, socialism isn't so bad after all, say some people. Well, go live in Venezuela for a little bit, or Cuba. Try China. It's not as good as you think it is, folks. And it's important that we maintain our liberties and fight for them. So education's at the core of that. Now, one last comment about this, Mike, because I do believe that, you know, we talked Prop 16 earlier, sort of reintroducing affirmative action back into our Constitution and moving away from meritocracy. I don't think it's fair. I don't think we can look in the rearview mirror and try to say we're going to move forward. We have to steer by giving kids the opportunity to be educated, giving choice in school to our kids. And I don't mean just kids who are in affluent communities. I'm talking about kids in the inner city. Give them the choice, the opportunity education, those charter schools that they may prefer to go to. Let's open up this opportunity for all children of all races and creeds and religions so everyone can succeed. But it starts by working hard with individual responsibility and choices of where they can get educated. I'm all in favor of that.
That's great. That's great. Well, hey, Jim, man, we should do this again. We got so much to talk about. I don't want to keep people on or keep you on for too long. I know you have a lot of things to do. The campaign's going great. I'm seeing so much enthusiasm around you. It's exciting. I see your bus up in Poway and your bus out.
Oh boy, we've got caravans going. We've got TV ads going, radio spots. We've got newspaper ads. It's exciting. We think we're going to do extremely well. It's a groundswell of support. I call it a grassroots campaign. I'm an entrepreneur. Michael, you are too. This is like grassroots. Get it done, hands-on, and enjoy it. Enjoy the ride, but engage in policy, and let's get it done. Thank you.
You look like you're having fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody should know that we've got the DeBello Congress website up here. People can come on there. They can make a donation. And connect with some other folks in their community and tell more people about you. Obviously, you can share this video. You can follow America's New Clothes. We're trying to be that little 6-year-old kid who points out that the emperor's naked. For a lot of the themes of our day are having too many people just go along with the party line, and in some cases you got to break from it. And I see that in you, your leadership, your entrepreneurship, and I truly hope that San Diego second congressional district picks you to send to Washington.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you today. I've always enjoyed it, and look forward together to helping this country move forward.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jim. Until next time.
Thanks, everyone.